you're new here, welcome, and thank you so much for checking out my channel. Now for today's video, I'll be sharing 3 super fun game day recipes. Now this is perfect for really any football themed party or like the Super Bowl coming up. Now each of these recipes are football themed, super simple and easy to make, and you can get all the products at your local supermarket. I really had conveniency in mind when I was putting together these ideas, so I really hope that it inspires you to make something super fun and delicious for your friends and family, and hopefully it is super easy for you to make as well. Now for the first recipe, we'll be making a garlic and cheese pull-out bread that is shaped like a football. And then for the second recipe, we'll be making potato skins that also look like footballs. They're so cute, I can't wait to show you. And then for the last recipe and the absolute easiest recipe, it's basically going to be a bread bowl with spinach dip inside, and it also looks like a football, and I will show you how in just a bit. Now I'll also be listing the timestamps down below for each of these recipes so that you can skip ahead to the information that you're looking for. And of course, as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you love it, and don't hesitate to comment down below if you have any questions at all. So with that said, let's jump right into the recipes. Alright guys, so let's jump right into our first recipe. So to start, you'll be needing this Pillsbury buttermilk biscuit dough, and I grabbed about 3 of them. You'll need some unsalted butter, some fresh garlic. We are gonna grate some fresh Parmesan as well. I love Parmigiano Reggiano, and don't worry, you will not be needing this whole block. And then we're gonna be stuffing our bread rolls with some fresh Gruyere cheese. You can also use Fontina for this. That's another really great cheese to use. And some fresh Italian parsley. So we're gonna get started by chopping up just a little bit of parsley so that we can begin to make the garlic sauce for our rolls. So once you have that nicely chopped, then you're gonna pull out a small saucepan, and before you turn on the heat, we're actually just going to grate a couple of garlic cloves. Now I grated 5 garlic cloves, but you can feel free to use less if you don't want the garlic to be too strong. And then once you've fully grated those garlic cloves, you'll pour in your butter and put the heat on medium so that our garlic can start to cook with the butter. Once the butter is completely melted and you bring it to a simmer, let it simmer continuously for 1 minute, and then you can turn off your heat and stir in your chopped parsley. And that's it. Allowing your garlic to cook like that really just gives you a delicious garlic infused butter. So from here, you'll set this aside, and then we'll get started on our bread rolls. Now the first thing we're gonna do is take out a baking sheet, cover it with parchment paper, and set it aside. Then I'm gonna take out another parchment paper to cut out the template for our football. Now there are 2 easy ways to do this. You can fold your paper in half vertically and draw half of the football, or you can fold your paper in half horizontally and draw half of the football but as a rainbow. I find that the rainbow method is a little bit easier, but feel free to do whatever works best for you. Now while your paper is still folded, you're gonna cut out the shape you just drew, and when you unfold it, you should be left with a pretty decent football shape. Now remember, this does not have to be perfect in any way. What matters most is the placement of your rolls before we put it in the oven. Next up, you'll place your template onto the pan, and we're going to take out our Gruyere cheese so we can start cutting small squares to stuff our bread rolls with. Now for this, you'll want about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of a square. And as much as Gruyere is my personal preference, you could also use mozzarella, Fontina, or cheddar, or really anything else you'd like. And of course, you'll want to cut just as many cheese blocks as bread rolls. So of course, just keep that in mind as you cut. And now that we have our blocks, I'm going to take out our dough. For this, I'll be using Pillsbury's buttermilk biscuit grands. Now since I'm going to cut each biscuit in half, I'll be able to make about 16 rolls from this package. So to make our roll, I'm going to grab a biscuit, cut it in half, try to open it up with my hands, and then stick a block of cheese right in the center, and then use my fingers to pinch the ends of the dough together and close up the roll. To help close up the roll, I'm also just going to roll it with my hands, and I like to cuff the dough with my hand to roll it. Now when you roll it, you'll want to make sure that it's fully closed so there's no chance of any of the cheese seeping out of the roll. And once it's good to go, I'm going to start placing it on the template to start forming the shape of the football. From here, you'll continue to follow the same process until you have enough rolls to complete the shape. I used about 2 packages of dough, but it really depends on what dough you use and how big you want your football to be. This dough is honestly a really great store-bought option if you're looking to save yourself the hassle from making fresh dough. Now, of course, fresh dough is absolutely delicious, so if you have that extra time on your hands, go for it. But I was really looking for simplicity with this recipe. Now, the template is really helpful with just maintaining the shape of the football as you're adding each roll. It's completely okay if some of the rolls or the entire roll is a little off the template. Use it as more of a guide to give you the shape that you want. Now, this is a recipe that you can prepare early in the day and leave it covered and in the refrigerator until it's time to bake before your guests arrive or while everyone's enjoying some other appetizers. Now, before I put my rolls in the oven, I went ahead and just readjusted them all and made sure that I really liked this shape and that it was really giving me that football shape. You'll also want to make sure that you don't leave too much space in between each roll so that there isn't any holes or gaps in between each roll so that it kind of just looks like one big bread. And once you love your shape, brush some of that garlic sauce onto the rolls along with some of that freshly grated Parmesan and put it into the oven to bake. You want to bake it for about 30 minutes or until the rolls are slightly golden. And while those are baking in the oven, I'm actually going to slice some of my Gruyere cheese so I can form the laces of my football. And this will bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And these look nice and golden, so I'm gonna take these right out of the oven. And while they're still nice and hot, I'm gonna smother that garlic butter all over this bread so that it can absorb all of those yummy flavors. And if you notice here, I do have some bread rolls that I did not close perfectly, which is why they ended up opening up a little bit and the cheese is kind of exposed. So if that happens to you, don't worry, just grab some more of the garlic sauce and just make sure to cover it. It won't make a difference in how it tastes. So just make sure that you close yours really nice and tight so that doesn't happen to you. Then I'm gonna top it with some shredded cheese and add your laces, and it's time to enjoy. Now, when you're setting it out for the family and friends, you can always feel free to leave it on the parchment paper, or you can actually cut the excess parchment paper surrounding the football instead. Now it's time for our next recipe. We're gonna make some delicious potato skins. Alright guys, you'll be needing some russet potatoes. Now keep in mind that you'll be able to make 2 servings out of each potato, so make sure to just think about that before you decide how many potatoes you want to make. You'll be needing some cheese so that we can fill those potatoes, some green onions, some bacon which will turn into bits, some sour cream for the laces, and then to actually add the laces, you can use a bottle like this, a Ziploc bag, you can use a piping bag, really whatever is going to work best for you to put those laces on the potato skins seamlessly. And that's about it, so let's jump back in. Okay, so I'm going to start off with 2 baking sheets and I'm just going to cover those both up with aluminum foil. We'll be using one for our potatoes and the other for our bacon. Next, I'm going to wash and dry 4 potatoes and then lay them out on my pan. And you'll get 2 servings out of each potato, so keep in mind how many servings you'd like and then go from there. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is just poke some holes in my potatoes with a fork. Now you are gonna have to be a little firm with your fork just because the potatoes are hard at this point, but these holes are really gonna allow it to bake really nice and evenly and much faster. Next, I'm gonna drizzle some extra virgin olive oil all over my potatoes and use my hands to just smother those in that oil. You can also use avocado oil or canola oil for this. And then I'm gonna grab some kosher salt and season the potatoes on both sides. And then I'm gonna grab some fresh black pepper and season both sides as well. And then once those are nice and seasoned, I'm just gonna set this aside and bring back my other tray and lay out our bacon. So for every potato, you'll need at least 1 slice of bacon. So I'll be laying out 4 slices of bacon for my 4 potatoes, but if you want extra bacon, then feel free to lay out some extra slices. And now that we've laid those out, we're just gonna toss both pans in the oven, and I'm just gonna put these both to bake at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Next up, I'm gonna take out my green onions and I'm just going to quickly chop these up so that we can use these to top our potato skins at the ends. So once you've sliced just enough green onions, place them in the bowl and set them aside for later. Once it's been about 15 to 20 minutes, it's a good time to check on your bacon, and our bacon looks nice and ready, but our potatoes need a little bit more time. So I'm gonna take my bacon out of the oven and set it out to cool, and once it's ready, then you're gonna wanna go ahead and chop your bacon up into small bits, and as you can tell, it is nice and crunchy, which is exactly what we're looking for. Put your bacon bits inside a bowl and set aside. Now I have to tell you, making bacon in the oven is a total lifesaver because it comes out just as great, except you don't have to watch it at all while it's in the oven. And then once you're done, you just remove the aluminum foil and you're left with a perfectly clean pan and no grease to pick up. Next, you'll want to check your potatoes to make sure that they're ready. So the best way to check if they're ready is to grab your fork and simply stab your potato, and if the fork goes in nice and smooth, you'll know they are definitely ready. And once they are, you'll remove them from the oven and let them cool for about 15 minutes or until it's comfortable for you to touch them. And then you're just going to cut each potato in half. And then we're actually going to remove the inside of each potato. Now, I really like to leave at least a small rim of potato around the entire thing, but that's totally up to you. You can definitely leave them a little bit thinner, but I do like to have a little bit of that potato taste on my potato skin. And I always like to set aside my leftover potatoes to make some quick mashed potatoes. And once those are good to go, then I'm gonna melt some butter and just brush that along the inside of all of my potatoes. And then we're gonna flip them over so that the rims are facing the pan and toss this back into the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes so that our potatoes can get nice and crispy. And I've just taken these out of the oven after about 15 minutes, and as you can tell, they are nice and crispy. And now I'm gonna fill these up with some sharp cheddar cheese, some bacon bits, and then place it back in the oven for a couple more minutes or until the cheese is melted. Now in the meantime, I'm gonna prepare my sour cream so that we can use this for the laces on our football. So I'm gonna start off with a glass and put my Ziploc bag inside the glass so that I can easily put my sour cream inside the bag. Now, of course, you can use a bottle for this or a piping bag instead, but a Ziploc bag will work just fine for this. So we're just going to nip the corner very small, and then I'm going to push all the sour cream to that corner of the bag. Twist the bag so that I can hold it easily, and I'm good to go. And by now, our cheese should be all melted, so I'm gonna take this out of the oven. Now before I pipe, I always like to practice at least once or twice to make sure that I like how it's coming out of the bag, and this looks good. So from here, you're just gonna pipe those laces, and this is exactly what you want it to look like. And keep in mind that it's not gonna be perfect, but it is still so cute, and as long as you can tell that it's a football, you're pretty much good to go there. And then we're just gonna top it with some green onions, and we're all set. And there you have it, guys, some delicious potato skins that look like footballs. Alright guys, so we are down to our last appetizer, and I have to say this is the absolute easiest one, and this only requires 3 ingredients. So here I have just some fresh rosemary bread from Costco, very inexpensive. Here we have one of my favorite pre-made spinach, artichoke, and Parmesan dips. This is gonna go inside of our bread, and you can feel free to use a fresh recipe if you prefer to do that instead. And last but not least, you'll need a pepper, and that is it guys, super easy. So let's jump into the last one. Okay, so for this one, we're gonna start off by just measuring our bread and then pretty much measuring out exactly how big I would want my football to be. So based off of the size of my bread, I'm doing it about at least 1 to 2 inches inside the bread on both sides. So with that said, I'm gonna shoot for a 7-inch football. So I'm basically going to create my own template once again for my football so that I can go ahead and cut out the most perfect football that I can. Obviously, you can grab your knife and you can do this freehand if you'd like, but I think that creating a template just contributes to more of a cleaner cut. So the next thing I'm gonna do is cut out a piece of parchment paper that's going to be the same size of the football that I'm trying to make, which is 7 inches. And then I'm gonna follow the same process that I took to create the template for the bread rolls. So I'm going to grab my piece of parchment paper and then I'm gonna fold it in half. and I'm just going to draw out half of the football and cut that shape right out so that now when I open my paper, I have a full football. So this is going to be a little bit more of a narrow football just because of the way that my bread is shaped, and that works totally fine. So what you're going to do is place your template onto your bread, and you're just going to grab 2 toothpicks so that we can just keep that template right in place. And then I'm going to grab a small serrated knife, and I'm just going to start cutting my football out of the bread. Now this type of knife will probably be the easiest for you just because it is bread, so those little edges will help you cut the bread. Now I'm gonna cut the first top part of the bread, and then I'm gonna cut the bottom part of the bread. Now remember, this part doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you wanna keep it as precise as possible. So now I'm gonna remove my toothpicks, and now that those are removed, all I have to do is pretty much pop this bread right out. And of course, you can feel free to use your knife to kind of help you do that by cutting any pieces that maybe are still stuck together. And now I'm gonna grab a spoon, and you're just gonna wanna remove all of the bread on the inside of the loaf to make space for that spinach dip. And I'm gonna use the spoon to pretty much scrape all the inside edges of the bread, and you'll wanna remove all of those crumbs. And once it looks pretty clear and good like this, then we're just gonna use another spoon and start tossing our spinach dip inside the loaf. And you're gonna want it to be nice and full. Now the more spinach dip you put in this, the less you have to refill later. Now of course you can always use a fresh spinach dip recipe as well for this. Now I bought this one at Costco, but I did also want to mention that Trader Joe's also does have a really good store-bought spinach dip. So feel free to check that out if you're looking for something convenient and you just want to save yourself the hassle of making a fresh dip. And that looks nice and full, so now I'm going to prepare it for serving. So I'm actually going to serve it on this cutting board, and I'm just going to add these little mini toasts on the sides. Now, if you've ever watched any of my previous videos, you know that I love these little mini toasts. I think they're honestly perfect for everything. They're pretty inexpensive, and I feel like they just kind of always elevate the look. So feel free to try them out if you like the look as well. And then for the finishing touches, I'm going to use my last ingredient, which is the red pepper. And from here, I'm going to remove the stem and the inside of the pepper so that I can start slicing my pepper to create the laces of our football. So to do this, I cut 2 thin slices of the pepper to make for the longest part of the lace. And once you have the sizes that you like, you'll just want to push those pieces right into the spinach dip. And now for the rest of the laces, I'm just gonna cut shorter pieces so that those can go on the bottom and the top of the big part of my lace to make the full laces of a football. Now keep in mind that you are not limited to using a pepper for this. You can of course cut a carrot or cheddar cheese, really whatever you have on hand. As long as it stands out, it'll pretty much give you the same look. And there you have it, another appetizer that is great for any game day. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you love this video, and I hope that these recipes truly just make your football themed parties just a little bit easier and a little bit tastier. I will see you in the next video. Bye!